Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us in this special Parsha Insights on Friday morning for Parsha's Pinchas. It's very exciting because this week we have Ben Zemmel will be taking over. I'm going to speak for a few minutes, say a short thought on the Parsha, and then Ben will take over and blow us away with his pearls of wisdom. Pinchas was a real legend. We see at the end of last week's Parsha the actual story of Pinchas when the Midianite girls infiltrated the Jewish camp. They were influencing all the people and trying to gear them in and rein them in to kind of serve idols and to serve Avodah Zarah. Bilam had a plan to curse the Jews. He wanted to curse the Jews and ruin the Jewish nation, but that didn't work. So he worked on bringing all the girls in and seducing all the Jewish people, and slowly, when the girls got involved, the Jewish people started serving Avodah Zarah and started going towards the other side. And it got so bad that the head of the prince of the tribe in Shimon, Zimri ben Solo, he secluded himself with a Midianite princess in the middle of the Jewish tent. And just imagine the scene, or rather, maybe don't imagine the scene, but just picture the moment of this great Jewish leader, Jewish prince, taking a Midianite princess and together in the middle of the entire Jewish camp. And I assume there was a buzz, and the Jewish people was, I guess, confused, but also there was a bit of a party going on. The way that the sages talk about the wild parties that were happening there was strange. But Pinchas was standing on the side and he couldn't take this anymore. He couldn't watch what was happening, and he took a spear, went right to both of them, and he stabbed through Zimri and Cosby, straight through them. Now just imagine that. Now the mood of the Jewish people was like a party, like wild, and then suddenly from one second to the next it changed. And there's a Jewish prince and a Midianite princess was stabbed in the middle of the Jewish camp. And now I was a few times I do music at bar mitzvahs and stuff like that, and I was at bar mitzvah doing the music once. And the boys were dancing and it was exciting. It was just such a very happy and exciting moment. And suddenly something went wrong with the music and it just cut off within literally like a second. And when that kind of mood changed, that kind of like there's an excitement, there's like this buzz in the air, and there's like you're running towards a certain goal, a certain achievement, or just an excitement, and then suddenly like 1 second to the next, boom, it stopped. So the Jewish people were kind of on this roll. It was a negative role. They were going towards these Midianite women, but suddenly with 1 second to the next, Pinchas came and he changed it all. Now what's interesting is the Jewish people didn't turn to him with happiness, they turned to him and they said to him, how dare you? They started criticizing him. How dare you? How dare the grandson of an idol worshipper kill a Jewish prince? And they're saying to him, who do you think you are? They weren't happy that he stopped the party. They were like having a good time. So that's why this week's Parsha starts off talking about Pinchas, giving him bracha, reiterating his lineage. He was a grandson of Aaron HaKohen, someone who pursues peace, who exudes love. Aaron is Ohev Shalom, V'rodei Shalom. And also Pinchas was awarded the covenant of peace. He was given the status of a Kohen in future generations, showing how great the act he did was, as opposed to the Jewish people looking at him, how can you stop our party? We're so careful about every letter in the Torah. And there's one letter, when we read in the Torah, there's a mark, it's too close together, too far apart. We're so careful about every single letter in the Torah. But there's in the beginning of the Parsha, when it talks about the bris of Shalom, the covenant of peace that's given to Pinchas, the vav is split in two. It's literally a split vav in the Torah, if you look in the Torah. And there's a powerful lesson in this. And the Torah is teaching us sometimes in order to create peace, we need to break peace. Sometimes defending yourself. Sometimes drastic measures are required in order to create peace. Like what Pinchas had to do. And we see in Mishlei it says, he who spares the rod hates the child. Of course, we shouldn't hit our children. We shouldn't hit people. We shouldn't use physical force. But being too free, being too that's just all loving and everything's okay and whatever, no matter what you do is all good. Maybe that's not the best way. We need to have some kind of discipline, but with good intentions. Like Pinchas had the most amazing intentions. He was l'shem shamayim. So we need to be able to discipline. We need to be able to kind of be strong, but at the same time do it with an abundance of love and great intention. But at the same time, it was a broken vav, which is unfortunate that this piece had to come through the murder, had to come through this crazy act of killing. Because the ultimate peace really is if you do use calm words, like Aaron HaKohen, Pinchas' grandfather, who was Ohev Shalom, Rodev Shalom, and he spoke calmly in order to create peace amongst the Jewish people. So that's just a lesson I want to share with you today. And in order to create peace, and on the moment of peace, I want to just pass pass it over to our dear very own Ben Zemmel, who's going to take you away and inspire you with beautiful words of wisdom. Ben.
First of all, thank you, Shlomie, for inviting me. It's nice. I'm actually in Hale, so it's nice to be in Hale, and it's nice to be at this share. So I'm going to talk about completely different section of the Parsha. I want to give a bit of an introduction to the idea I'm going to say, and then hopefully we'll see a bit of the end of the Parsha. So there's a very interesting concept or principle that we learn about in Jewish philosophy, which really is in the Gemara, and our later Jewish philosophers speak about, is the idea that everything in the spiritual realm, everything in the the world of spirituality, the world of ruchnius, really has a counterpart in the physical world. Even though we imagine that the physical and the spiritual are two completely separate entities, in reality, they're just parallel. They're parallels of each other. And one of the more recent rabbis, Rabbi Tatz, gives an excellent example of this. He says, imagine if you're in an old-fashioned cinema and they used to have the reel, the film on the projector, and then you shine the light through the film, and then you'd have in the cinema you'd have the screen, you'd have the video. So Rabbi Tatz says it's the same thing with the spiritual world. We have the film, we have the spiritual counterparts where the light, whatever it is, it passes through, and then we have the physical world. They're reflections of each other. And what emerges from this, which is very interesting, is that by examining the physical world, by examining natural and regular phenomena, we're actually able to learn things about the spiritual world. So it's not just that we have the physical and the spiritual, we have the physical as a means, we have the natural, the scientific, the natural world as a means of getting us towards the spiritual world. This is an idea which is very relevant for many different areas of Jewish philosophy. Now, to give a few examples of this concept, the Ran, in the beginning of one of the greatest medieval philosophers, the Ran, he speaks about, he talks about how, he's talking about it more in medieval terms, but he's talking about the idea of atoms and compounds. He says that, why is it that Hashem made the world in a way where you have smaller parts which are put together to make more useful and greater parts? Atoms by themselves are pretty much meaningless, but when you put them together, you form compounds, you form all different things which are necessary for survival. Says the Ran, this is to teach us, by examining the natural world, we learn that when we come together, not during lockdown, but when we come together, when we become like a compound, we don't allow ourselves to be like atoms, all spread about, pretty much useless. We actually come together and we form a minion, or we form whatever we do, as in, not nowadays, but hopefully in a few months we'll be back to it. And we come together, then, says the Ran, we see from the physical world, we see this is how we are supposed to act. We are supposed to come together, and together we are stronger. Now, I want to give you one more example of this before we finish. It's a very important principle that you can take for the whole of life. By examining many different aspects of the natural and scientific world, you'll learn lots about Hashem. Now, there's one other example of this in this week's Parsha. Towards the middle of the Parsha, the Torah talks about a concept called inheritance, Yerusha. Now, inheritance, although it's a very simple concept, is also in secular law. But if you think about it for a second, it's actually quite interesting. So we have someone who, unfortunately, is their time 120 years are up, and now, instead of their possessions, instead of their property just becoming ownerless, just anyone can take it, it passes on to their children. That's the idea of inheritance. That's this week's parasha. That's the idea of inheritance. Now, Rabbi Dessler notes that inheritance is not just a monetary thing. Actually, the moment a person has a child, the child is actually inherits the genetic features, the physical features, the characteristics of the parent. They're two things that go hand in hand. On the one hand, we have a child inheriting the physical, the genetic features of the parents, in some cases more than others. And we also have the child inheriting the monetary characteristics of the parent. Now, Dessler notes, why is this? So, says of Dessler, a beautiful idea, and I think it's very relevant, very important. He says that, again, this is the same idea. We're examining the natural world. We're saying, why is it that Hashem decided to give the child the same genetics? Why is it that Hashem decided to give the child the same money as the parent? Why did he decide to do that? So Dessler says, because really we know that our mission in life, everyone's individual mission, is really governed by two factors, two very important factors. The first factor is their genetic makeup, how they are, what their characteristics are like, what their features are like, what situation they find them in, who their family is. And the second thing is their financial situation, or their lives, just where they are in the world. That's two things that define us, very, very important. Very important things that define our mission in life. So says Rav Dessler, when a person has a child, it's not just that the child has a whole new mission in life. There's a parent, there's a child, and nothing to do with each other. Says that's not correct. Sometimes the child's mission is to carry on that which the parent started. We learn this many times in the Torah that there's a concept of Aaron, he gave over to his sons. We pass on the mantle, that's the word, pass it on. It's because that's the same thing. Not entirely, because obviously sometimes children's missions are different to the parents, but often, and on a more general level, the parents, children are there to continue the mission of the parents. So says Rav Dessler, that's why we have this idea of genetic, when we pass on our genes to our children. It's because we're trying to create an environment where our children's mission is very similar to ours. They have similar temperament. They have similar characteristics. They have maybe even similar facial features. Many different things that are similar about the parents and the children is to remind us that we have the same mission, or a similar mission to that which our parents left to us. And I think that besides the importance of this idea, it's an idea that we can take throughout the whole of understanding Judaism, is that we should never see the spiritual world and the physical world as two entirely separate entities. We shouldn't view that we're here we're eating, we're sleeping, we're doing mitzvot, we're doing very nice physical things. And then there's somewhere in heavens, like unfortunately some artists like to depict, if you look up to heaven, then suddenly there's this nice spiritual realm of angels and all different things. No, that's not the way Judaism views it. Judaism views that they're just different dimensions, is the word. Like there's a 3D dimension, there's what we can see now, and then there's beyond the 3D dimension, there's another dimension. They're all part of the same existence, right? They're all part of the same thing. It's whenever we do a mitzvah, although it's easy for us to just imagine we're putting on tefillin, well actually, it's a slightly different dimension. There's also a spiritual side going on as well. And when we see physical concepts, when we see ideas in nature and in science, they're not just physical concepts, they're concepts that are paralleled in the spiritual world. So I hope there's a general idea that the Parsha Mishnah says, give to a chacham, give to a wise person, and they'll develop it more. And that's the idea I want to share you, that this idea of the spiritual and the physical being not separate entities, which we see manifest with the example of Yerusha, with the example of inheritance. And thank you for Shlomie and good Shabbos.